Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Titan Quest, or specifically Titan Quest Anniversary Edition. This is a game that came out a few years ago. I want to say like mid 2010s, something like that. And then got an Anniversary Edition much later on, like 2020, 2021, sometime around then. Might be 2022, but it had an Anniversary Edition. Anyway, this is a game that I have started multiple times and never finished, but have done essentially the base game now. So I want to talk about it because I've had a very interesting experience with this game, and that's the difference between playing this game in single player and the difference between playing that and this game in the multiplayer, and how quite different that experience has been. So let's just talk about the game itself. It is a typical action RPG in the similar veins of things like Diablo, Torchlight, Path of Exile, those style games. You sort of isometric top-down view, pick a character, run around, beat up tons and tons and tons of mobs of enemies, level up, min-max game for heaven for a lot of people, or just crazy builds. Good games to play when you're listening to a podcast if you're not bothered about the story and you just want to run around killing things and leveling up and grinding and all that good stuff. Titan Quest has always been one of my favourite ones in terms of the theming for the game. I like the idea of where this game is set, like ancient times. This game uses a lot of mythology from those times, which is really cool. And the base game essentially goes from Greece and travel around there, to Egypt and travelling around there, to Asia. It starts with you in Babylon, but you go along the Silk Road and end up in China along the Great Wall and places like that. And then eventually the final sort of boss encounter is in Mount Olympus. So you're combining different places, different mythology and ending there. And then the expansions add on different things like Hades is the Immortal Throne, I think is that. And then you also have Ragnarok, which takes you to the Norse mythology side of things. You have Atlantis, which takes you to there, and then you have the final expansion, which takes you back to China. So there's a ton of places to go and things to do in it. But the base game itself, I finally finished it, was about level 30, 31, playing that in multiplayer, and it feels nice after all these years to finally do it. But my experience with this game has been very mixed, unfortunately, and this is a game that is also on consoles. You can get this on pretty much any console at the moment, which I think is probably quite a fun game to have on console. It probably plays a little bit differently. I would like to look at the port of it at some point for Switch, but I played this on PC. But yeah, in single player, this game, for the most part, runs fairly well. It has a few issues sometimes when loading between areas or loading up a cave or tomb. You'll get a big stutter. So that's obviously not good, but for the most part, the game plays well, feels good to play. Very, very few performance issues. Most of the game is centered around you whacking things or shooting things or casting spells on enemies and picking up loot, as you'd imagine, and equipping different armor and loot and putting things in your items. And that all works brilliantly. That was exactly what you want from a game like this. All works wonderfully, no real issue there. The classes in this game are very cool. I very much enjoy them. I think you have, for example, you have Warfare, which is about aggressive attacking. So rather than just being like, oh, you have your barbarian build or you have your rogue build, it's like, you mastery in various different things. So you have like Warfare, for example, which is, you're about dual wielding and about attacking and attack speed and aggressively just beating up enemies like that. You have Defense, which is all about shield attacks and like blocking damage. You have Nature, which is like healing and like wild animals. Storm, which is like thunder and lightning spells. Spirit, which is like a necromancy type thing, summoning like pets and things. The Rune Warrior, which is one of the newer classes which I played, which is kind of like a cross between melee and magic. So you kind of have like some spells, but you can also focus on melee attacks. And then there's other ones as well. There's like an Earth Fire one. There's like a newer one, which is like an Alchemist. The actual masteries in this I really like. The way they're set up and the way that they work are super cool. You essentially pick your first mastery at level 1, and you pick your second mastery if you want a second one at level 8, and that's always open to you for the rest of the game whenever you choose to pick it. And the way they work is you have square icons and circular icons. The square icons are your activatable abilities. They're either turn them on off, or they're the spells that you cast to do whatever. And then you usually have a bunch of circular ones which are passes or proc attacks, which basically trigger when you use said attack. And then on the left hand side you can put loads of points in to level up and get later masteries and stuff, which give you a bunch of like strength, dexterity, intelligence, all that good stuff, more health. And it works really well, and the game gives you a bunch of customizability with these things. Sometimes you might just want one particular mastery, sometimes you want two, sometimes like Warfare and Defense go together amazingly. I think Rune Warrior and Defense, Rune Warrior and Warfare also go together really well. Spirit and Dream, that's another one, it's like a dream one. Like there's some of these synergies that you can get from these are insane, and you can do some really, really fun, crazy builds with them. I personally like the rune one because you have these rune mines that are just insane. You run into a mob of enemies, you drop down the mines, they blow everything up, especially the birds, they go pop and all the feathers everywhere. Really cool classes, some of the best I've seen in a more modern game, getting away from that typical sort of structure of like, you know, this person's got a bow, this person's got a sword, you know, so it gives a lot of flexibility, and I really appreciate that. The guys from this studio, or some of them went on to do Create Entertainment and made Grim Dawn, and they even improved on things there, so which is based on the foundation of this game, so that continued, but like ultimately the way that the class is set up, very good. In terms of enemies and things like that, the enemies in the areas, in Greece you have a lot of that mythology of those enemies. So you'll have like your generic stuff like zombies and skeletons that you would find pretty much throughout the entire game, but then in Greece you'll find that there are enemies that are like more to that sort of, you know, minotaurs and gorgons and things like that. And then when you get to Egypt, you get like the jackals and things that are based on that mythology. It's really cool. It's not China, sorry. The Asia one's kind of weird. You get like Neanderthals and Yetis, and it's weird. It's definitely a weird choice for them. You get more like dragon-like enemies as well, so that kind of makes sense. But some odd choices for the final area. But ultimately, what you get is a nice mash of enemy types, a nice mix of things to wail on, and like you get things that are mages and things that have archers and melee classes and beasts, and they all come on. You have demons and beasts and creatures, and it all kind of like like a usual thing you'd find in these games. They have different attacks. They can poison, they can bleed, they can pierce, they can stun. You know, Cyclopses are an absolute nightmare because just stun you. But ultimately, like that keeps it fresh. Like you could run. There's a particular section where you're in the Gardens of Babylon, and you're running through it, and you're fighting spiders and plant people and these like jackal men, and it's like a right old mix of enemies. It's really cool, actually. It's like one of my favorite bits of the game, just to run through that area, because there's so much variety there to fight, which is what you want really from a game like this. You want to be challenged, right? I mean, sometimes these games on the easier modes, you do want to kind of get overpowered and overleveled and just blitz through it so you can get to the harder modes, get to the better gear and all that. But ultimately, it's nice to have that variety there. And like I said before, you have the different areas, and that running around Greece is very like it feels very different to running around Egypt. Egypt obviously very desert heavy, so it's like that's kind of cool. And then when you get to like the third act, where you have like Babylon, and then the Great Wall, and then up in the mountains and all this stuff, there's enough variety here to make this game feel like you're making progress. The only one thing that's kind of odd is it makes the final act doesn't feel as long as the other two, but it might just be that we powered through it, because I basically went through that entire act multiplayer wise. So, but the good things about this game is it plays well for the most part in single player. You have a ton of different masteries, a ton of different skills. The gear that you find on the floor and stuff is decent, though you will find a lot of low level stuff to start with, even later on in those acts. But there's a ton of different fun things like that. A decent amount of enemy variety and good like areas to go to. Now, before we get to what like is the biggest issue with this game, I looked at what Anniversary Edition actually added, like when they updated the game, and one thing it specifically was mentioning was restored and improved multiplayer functionality. Now, my experience with the multiplayer as of the last week has not been a good one at all, in fact. And we need to talk about this, because a game like this that is, you know, you can play in a party of 4, 5, 6. I can't remember the exact party size, but I've been playing it 4-player. the multiplayer experience of this game has been terrible. Like, and when I mean terrible, I'm talking constant performance issues, the game hanging, the game stuttering, lag, dying from things that aren't there, hitting enemies that won't die. The netcode just seems all over the place. And this, even though I've managed to get through the game and finish it, or at least finish the main sort of the base game, it doesn't bode well for wanting to do any more of this game, basically. I'm playing it and I'm like, we've had game crashes as well. Now, I haven't had a single game crash in single player. I'm not saying that the game doesn't crash in single player, I just have yet to experience it, which makes me think that playing it in multiplayer has been a problem. Now, I don't know what mine's been like, because I've not been able to host it, because the people I've been playing with don't own the DLCs, which is fine, we can still play, I just jump into their games. But it is such a mixed bag. I might be fine for a good 10 to 15 minutes, then it might go absolutely crazy, and it just won't work properly. We've had, disconnects, like I said, all these things that have happened, and it's really ruined the experience. Like, I've had fun playing with it, I've had fun playing it with these people, but it's like, I can't recommend this to anybody that wants to play this game as a multiplayer game, because, the experience has been quite literally quite dire. For a game that is, a game like this, which is going to be centered around multiplayer for a lot of people, like, I know later on when I played Grim Dawn and played that, and the multiplayer on that was fine, and I know that this game is older, and that they obviously built the anniversary edition on the original game, but my Christ, like, there's no reason this game should be running this badly. Especially if they said that they added updates to this game during the anniversary one. It's, quite frankly, it's just downright just unacceptable how bad this runs. Now, there are definitely factors that could be at play there, like, whether somebody's using mods there, that might affect it. But even still, like, I could put up with, the stuttering. I could put up with the game, having a little bit of a hang. But the lag and the just things not working correctly and things breaking while playing online, it's just not acceptable at all. And it's like, if you are going to buy this game, if you are going to look into playing this game with people, go and look up footage, or go and look up what people are saying about the multiplayer. There might well be mods and things out there that fix it, but I'm talking about just playing the game as is. Like, it's easy enough to get in a game, you set up a group, you set up a password, whatever, and get people to invite. But it just is there's no reason why it should run like this at all. And it is the biggest thing about this game. If you are looking for a game to play single player, this is great. I would recommend it 100%. If you're looking for a game to play multiplayer, don't even waste your time. Go and look at other action RPGs that are newer, that are probably going to have better netcode that are going to work, because that, quite frankly, is just, that's how bad it is. That's the worst thing about this game, is the multiplayer. There are a couple of other things. I find it very difficult to click on certain enemies, which is kind of an issue when you're getting piled on. But there is a button on the keyboard that allows you to stand still and fire, so that kind of mitigates it, but there are times when I might struggle to click on like birds and things like that. The other thing is the difficulty spikes in this game usually come in the form of just more enemies, which is a lazy way of doing it. But that is how it works. As the game goes on, you'll run into a group of, say, like, lizard men, and there'll be like 10 of them, and they'll suddenly swamp you, and it's like, well, this isn't like harder in the set, like, as a more challenge, it's just there's more stuff hitting me. So I guess that's how you do it in a game like this. It's not the end of the world, it's not really a big issue. Ultimately, I've had an absolute blast playing it. I cannot recommend this as a multiplayer game, but if you want to play this as a single player game, and you can pick up a copy for decent, probably fairly cheap now. I can't speak too much on the DLCs because I've not played them, but the base game was fun. I think the game does a good job being a solid action RPG, and definitely recommend it for that. There might be fixes for the multiplayer. If there are, it's something I might have to look into. But it's not a fun experience at all. And that really sucks, because the actual game is really solid. It's one of the better action RPGs I've played. Like, if I had to put this up there, like, Torchlight 2 is probably one of my favourite of all time. Path of Exile is pretty great. Diablo 2 is pretty great. And then this is probably up there as well. Like, this is a fun game. Grim Dawn's really good. Like, most of these games are pretty solid, but that multiplayer really sucks. So if you are looking to get in this game, and you want to know what it's like in 2024, that's my honest, brutally honest opinion on it. Crap multiplayer, fantastic single player. So if that works for you, go out and buy this on cheap and have a good blast and stick on a podcast or something in the background and you'll have a great time playing it. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today then, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.